Hi, welcome to Conflict Story, where we bring you the best and most fascinating stories just for you. Let's dive right into one of those stories. It begins like this.
I never imagined my tranquil life by the lake would turn into a whirlwind of chaos and confrontation, but that's exactly what happened one fateful Saturday. It began as a peaceful day at my countryside home, but it quickly spiraled into an unforgettable showdown. It was mid-July and the sun was blazing. I was unwinding by the pool with a cold drink after a demanding week at work. A little background. My name is Daniel, a 37-year-old architect. About 4 years ago, I achieved my dream of buying a picturesque property overlooking Lake Champlain in Vermont. My house isn't extravagant, but it has a serene vibe with its spacious backyard and an inviting in-ground pool. I've often hosted friends and family for barbecues and swims, but this weekend was meant for solitude, or so I thought. That Saturday, my girlfriend was out of town on a yoga retreat. I was savoring the solitude, lounging poolside with a mystery novel. The serenity lasted barely 2 hours before the sound of multiple car doors slamming shattered the peace. Curious and slightly annoyed, I wandered to the front yard. To my astonishment, 3 SUVs were parked haphazardly in my driveway. Out tumbled a group of around 20 people, including kids, hauling coolers, inflatables, and picnic supplies. Leading the charge was a woman in her mid-40s, sporting a sharply angled bob haircut and oversized sunglasses. Let's call her Karen. You'll soon understand why. Karen spotted me and waved with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Oh, hi there, perfect timing," she chirped. "We'll need fresh towels and maybe some drinks." I blinked, trying to process what I was hearing. "Excuse me?" I managed to stammer. "Who are you?" Her smile froze for a fraction of a second before she continued brightly. "Don't be shy. We're friends of the previous owners, the Montgomerys. They told us we could use the pool anytime." My jaw dropped. "I bought this property 4 years ago. It's my private residence, not a rental. You need to leave." Karen's cheerful facade dissolved into a scowl. "That's ridiculous," she snapped. "The Montgomerys never mentioned selling. We're staying. The kids are excited, and it's too hot to argue." Before I could respond, she turned and began directing her group toward the backyard. Shocked, I followed them, only to find the kids already cannonballing into the pool and adults setting up lawn chairs. "Hey," I shouted, "this is trespassing. Get off my property now." Karen didn't even glance my way. "Calm down, sweetie," she said dismissively. "Why don't you fetch those towels and some lemonade?" My patience snapped. "I'm calling the police," I said, pulling out my phone. Karen's eyes narrowed. "My husband's a lawyer. Go ahead. Let's see how that works out for you." I hesitated, realizing a direct confrontation might escalate things unnecessarily. Then an idea struck. Plastering on a forced smile, I said, "You're right. Let me grab the refreshments." Karen's triumphant smirk returned as I retreated inside. Once there, I called my neighbor Paul, a retired sheriff and trusted ally. "Paul," I said, "you won't believe what's happening. I've got uninvited guests taking over my backyard. Any chance you can swing by?" "Be there in 10, Paul replied, "and I'll bring backup." In the meantime, I prepared a tray of lemonade, seasoned with an unhealthy dose of salt instead of sugar. I also dug out some old tattered towels from a storage bin. Armed with these amenities, I returned to the backyard. "Finally," Karen said as I handed out drinks. The first sip resulted in a chorus of grimaces and complaints. Karen spat her lemonade into the grass. "What is this?" she demanded. "Oh no," I said innocently. "I must have mixed up the salt and sugar. My bad." At that moment, Paul arrived with 2 uniformed officers. The mood shifted instantly as they approached. "Afternoon," Paul said, addressing Karen. "We received a report of trespassing. Care to explain?" Karen's confidence wavered. "We're friends of the Montgomerys," she said weakly. "This is all a misunderstanding." Paul shook his head. "The Montgomerys sold this property years ago. You're trespassing. Everyone needs to leave now." The officers began taking statements as Karen's group hastily packed up their belongings. Karen shot me a venomous look. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You're right," I replied. "It's just beginning." As Karen stormed off, I couldn't help but smile. The battle lines were drawn, and I was ready for whatever came next. The next day, the fallout from the confrontation began to unfold. I thought Karen's dramatic exit would be the end of it, but I had severely underestimated her tenacity. That morning, I woke up to a series of notifications on my phone. Karen had taken her grievances to the local community's Facebook page, painting me as a heartless villain who had ruined a simple family gathering. Her post was accompanied by a carefully curated photo of her group, adults and kids alike, looking dejected as they packed up their belongings. "All we wanted was a nice day by the pool," she wrote, "but instead we were treated like criminals. Is this the kind of neighbor we want in our community?" The comments were a mixed bag. Some people expressed outrage on her behalf, while others raised questions about the legality of her actions. "Wait," one user wrote, "did you have permission to use the property?" Karen's reply was vague and evasive, but her narrative was clearly gaining traction. Meanwhile, my inbox was flooded with emails. Most were from strangers, some sympathetic, others threatening. One particular email caught my attention. It was from someone claiming to be Karen's husband, a lawyer named Richard. His tone was condescending, and he threatened legal action unless I publicly apologized and offered compensation for emotional distress. It was laughable, but I wasn't taking any chances. I forwarded the email to Paul, who assured me it was an empty threat. "They have no case," he said firmly, "but document everything, just in case." As the day went on, Karen's online tirade continued to escalate. She organized a petition demanding that I open my pool to the community on weekends. By the evening, she had even scheduled a peaceful protest outside my property for the upcoming Saturday. Instead of getting angry, I decided to turn the situation to my advantage. I called Paul and laid out my plan. "If they want to make a spectacle," I said, "I'll give them one, but on my terms." The week leading up to the protest was uneventful, aside from the occasional drive-by glares from Karen and her entourage. I used the time to prepare. Paul helped me set up security cameras around the property, ensuring every angle was covered. I also printed out copies of my property deed and the police report from the initial incident. When Saturday arrived, so did the protesters. About 15 people gathered outside my driveway, holding signs with slogans like "Share the pool" and "Stop the greed." Karen was front and center, her theatrics on full display. She shouted into a megaphone about community spirit and the selfishness of homeowners who refuse to share their resources. I stepped outside armed with a calm demeanor and a folder of documents. The group quieted as I approached. Karen turned to face me, her expression smug. "Nice of you to join us," she said. "Care to explain why you think it's acceptable to homeowner association or this beautiful property all for yourself?" "I'd be happy to," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "First, let's get one thing straight. This is private property. I purchased it 4 years ago, and I have the documentation to prove it." I held up the deed for everyone to see. "Second, trespassing is illegal, as confirmed by the police. You were asked to leave and refused. That's not community spirit. That's entitlement." Karen's face flushed, but she recovered quickly. "We were misled," she argued. "The Montgomerys told us we could use the pool anytime." "The Montgomerys sold this property years ago," I countered. "Even if they had made such a promise, it became void the moment I became the owner. You can't just claim access to someone else's property without permission." One of the protesters raised their hand. "But why not let the community use it occasionally? It's such a nice spot." I took a deep breath. "Because maintaining this property isn't free. The pool alone costs hundreds of dollars a month to keep clean and safe. If something were to happen to anyone using it, I'd be liable. It's not about greed, it's about responsibility." Paul, who had been watching from the sidelines, stepped forward. "And just to be clear," he added, "any further attempts to access this property without permission will result in trespassing charges. The law is very clear on that." The crowd murmured uneasily. Karen, sensing the shift in momentum, tried one last tactic. "Fine," she said, "but this isn't over. We'll take this to the homeowners association. They'll make you share." I couldn't help but laugh. "Good luck with that," I said. "This property isn't part of any homeowner association. It's entirely independent. You have no jurisdiction here." Defeated, Karen's group began to disperse. She lingered for a moment, glaring at me with a mixture of anger and humiliation. Finally, she turned and stalked away. As I watched them leave, I felt a sense of relief, but also a nagging suspicion that this wasn't the end. Karen didn't strike me as someone who gave up easily. Still, for now, my property was mine again, and I intended to keep it that way. In the weeks that followed, the tensions surrounding my property simmered down, but not entirely. Karen's retreat from the protests didn't feel like a true victory. It felt more like the calm before the storm. And I was right. It started with small annoyances. Trash began appearing on my lawn, empty soda cans, fast food wrappers, and even a deflated pool float. At first, I thought it might be local teens messing around, but the timing was too convenient to dismiss Karen as the prime suspect. My suspicions were confirmed when I spotted a familiar SUV parked across the street late one night. Its headlights were off, but I could see the silhouette of someone inside, watching my house. Karen was escalating her game. I installed additional security cameras around my property, this time ensuring they covered the street as well. Paul helped me position them for maximum coverage, and we tested them thoroughly. I even added motion-activated floodlights by the driveway and backyard. It wasn't long before these precautions paid off. One evening, just after midnight, the motion sensors activated the floodlights. Checking the live feed on my phone, I saw two figures skulking near my mailbox. One of them carried a spray can. My pulse quickened as I watched the duo vandalize my mailbox with fluorescent paint. They scrawled something illegible before darting off when the lights illuminated them fully. I saved the footage and called Paul, who arrived within minutes to assess the damage. "Classic Karen," Paul muttered as he examined the garish mess. "She's getting bolder. Let's take this to the sheriff tomorrow." The next day, armed with video evidence, I filed a formal complaint. The sheriff recognized Karen's SUV from the footage and promised to pay her a visit. I hoped that would be enough to scare her off, but Karen had other ideas. 2 nights later, I returned home from work to find my pool sabotaged. Someone had dumped bags of powdered dye into the water, turning it a sickly shade of green. A soggy note taped to the back door read, "Private pools are for selfish jerks." The audacity was infuriating, but it only strengthened my resolve. Paul and I devised a plan to end this once and for all. "If Karen wants a war, we'll give her one," Paul said with a smirk, "but we'll fight smart." The first step was turning the tables. I made another call to the sheriff, who agreed to increase patrols in the area. Then, with Paul's help, I set up a meeting with a local lawyer to discuss the harassment. The lawyer's advice was clear. Document everything, pursue a restraining order if necessary, and don't let Karen's antics provoke you into any rash actions. Meanwhile, Karen's online campaign against me continued. She posted pictures of my vandalized property with captions suggesting I had staged the incidents to gain sympathy. Her followers, a small but vocal group, ate it up, leaving comments that ranged from mildly supportive to outright aggressive. One user even suggested organizing another protest. What Karen didn't realize was that her digital footprint was working against her. Paul's son, a tech-savvy college student, helped us collect evidence of her social media activity. Every post, comment, and interaction was archived, creating a comprehensive timeline of her harassment. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when the sheriff's department obtained a warrant to search Karen's property. It turned out my suspicions were correct. They found spray cans matching the paint on my mailbox, along with bags of powdered dye identical to what had been dumped in my pool. Karen was arrested for vandalism and harassment. The news spread quickly, and the public opinion that Karen had worked so hard to sway began to crumble. Her supporters distanced themselves, deleting comments and quietly unfollowing her page. Meanwhile, the local paper ran a story about the incident, complete with quotes from the sheriff praising the importance of respecting private property. As for me, I finally had peace. The cameras stayed up, and I continued to monitor my property diligently, but the constant stress of Karen's antics was gone. Paul and I shared a celebratory drink on the patio one evening, toasting to the end of an absurd chapter. "Think she'll try anything else?" I asked. Paul chuckled. "Doubt it. She's humiliated, and she'll probably want to lay low for a while. But if she does, you'll be ready." Ready indeed. Karen's reign of entitlement was over, and my little slice of paradise was mine once more. Despite Karen's arrest and the evidence stacked against her, the saga wasn't quite over. I'd underestimated the depths of her vindictive nature. While she stayed quiet for a few weeks following her release, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was plotting her next move. And as it turned out, I was right. One crisp Saturday morning in October, I stepped out onto my porch to find a new kind of assault on my property. A large banner strung across the trees at the end of my driveway. "Justice for Karen," it read in bold red letters, along with a QR code linking to a petition. The audacity of it made me laugh. Karen was clearly trying to rewrite the narrative yet again, casting herself as the victim in this absurd drama. But this time I was ready. Paul had given me invaluable advice after Karen's arrest. Let her bury herself. People like Karen always overplay their hand. I took down the banner and forwarded photos of it to my lawyer and the sheriff. Within hours, Karen's petition began circulating on social media. It was full of wild accusations, claiming I had conspired with law enforcement to falsely accuse her and that I was using my power to suppress her rights. Her tone was desperate, and the petition gained little traction outside her dwindling circle of loyal followers. I decided it was time to go on the offensive, but in a way that would ensure Karen's antics wouldn't escalate further. First, I worked with my lawyer to file a restraining order against her. This would make any further attempts to harass me or trespass on my property a direct violation of the law. Second, I reached out to the local news outlet that had covered her arrest. They agreed to run a follow-up story, this time focusing on the positive outcome of community members banding together to uphold property rights. The piece painted a clear picture of Karen's behavior, supported by interviews with neighbors who had witnessed her harassment firsthand. It even included a short video clip from my security cameras, showing her vandalizing my mailbox. Public sympathy shifted decisively in my favor, and Karen's attempts to smear me backfired spectacularly. In the days following the story's release, Karen's social media presence disappeared entirely. Her petition was quietly removed, and her remaining supporters melted away. I learned through the grapevine that she'd put her house on the market and was planning to move out of state. It seems she'd finally realized her reputation in the community was beyond repair. With Karen's departure, peace returned to my life. I celebrated by hosting a small gathering for friends and neighbors, a way to thank them for their support during the ordeal. As we enjoyed drinks by the pool, Paul raised a toast. "To justice," he said with a grin, "and to never underestimating the power of a good security camera." Laughter rippled through the group, and for the first time in months I felt truly at ease. Karen's reign of terror had ended, and my home was once again the haven I'd worked so hard to create. But as the party wound down and I sat alone by the pool, I couldn't help but reflect on the lessons I'd learned. Entitlement can be a powerful force, but resilience and preparation are stronger. And in the end, standing your ground, no matter how daunting the opposition, is always worth it. Are you hungry for more slices of stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to never miss out on any videos. See you tomorrow.